so. Thank you. Nice little shuffle going on there. Members, moving to item number 1, and that is to confirm the minutes of the council meeting which took place on the 15th of May 2018. Are you agreed that I sign these as a correct record? Agreed. Item 2. Apologies for absence. And if I may start, you've probably gathered I'm not Denise. Denise is actually at her daughter's graduation in Yorkshire and unfortunately can't be with us this evening. Robin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. We've received apologies from councillors John Fraser, Pat Frost, Peter Martin, Stephen Reynolds, Ross Welland, Nick Williams and Mike Hodge.
Item number 3. Declarations of interest. In accordance with the Waverley Code of Conduct, do members have any non-pecuniary or disclosable pecuniary interest to declare? Mr Taylor.
Thank you. Councillor Ramsdale has declared a pecuniary interest in relation to minute EXE 518 in part 2 of the executive minutes of the 5th of June relating to the Boom Credit Union, as he is a director of the Boom Credit Union and will leave the chamber for the duration of the item.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations? Before I go ahead with the Deputy Mayor's announcements, I would dearly like to welcome a very fine gentleman, Mr David Beeman. Congratulations on your success and welcome to this chamber. We're delighted to have you here. Not an awful lot to report, as you say, just a few weeks under our belt, but both Denise and I have been extremely busy. I myself have perhaps, I'm now in excess of doing 16 events, all of which are tremendously, honestly, it is just such a joy and an honour to be out there, it really is. And it's wonderful for me to have flown the flag in my own eastern part of the borough. And I went to Parkmead School recently and watched a very, very fine performance of The Lion King. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. And on Friday night I went to Broadwater School and again, Les Miserables. What a talented bunch of individuals. And Nick Williams, he was there also, and I'm sure he can vouch for us, that such talent, such effort goes into it. The actual highlight of everything I've done so far has got to be Armed Forces Day at Guildford Cathedral. It was a spectacular event and deeply heartwarming, and yet again, such a privilege to be there. Thank you. Moving on to question 5. Questions from members of the public. Do we have any?
None received, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Item number 6, questions by members. Do we have any questions received?
Madam Deputy Mayor, we've received one question from Councillor John Ward. All members have a copy of the response in front of them, and this will also be put on the Council's website.
Item number 7, motions. Have any motions been received from members?
None received.
I would now like to move to item number 8 and the minutes of the executive, and I would like to invite the Leader of the Council to present, please. Thank you, Leader. If you can please move the minutes of the 5th of June executive.
Right. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'm pleased to move the minutes of the executive of the 5th of June, and I believe I have a seconder.
Pleased to second, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Are there any speakers? Councillor Follows.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I hope I've put this in at the right point in the agenda. I just wanted to highlight first off a small issue that as I see as democratic deficit. So council rules and our constitution require that written questions from members had to be received by officers at 5 p.m. last Tuesday. The executive sat after that expiration date and supplementary papers for that meeting, which are actually containing the material issues in question about the spend, arrived on the 13th. So meaning in practice we've been constitutionally barred from asking questions in writing about that executive. I've written to Democratic Services about that and I'm happy that it's under consideration. I just wanted to make that point. On the main topic, projects being funded by the East Street dividend really need to be considered in the light of the financial viability of that project as a whole. I quote one of the board directors of Crest speaking earlier, this is a suboptimal position for everyone. If I may now quote some of the previous minutes of the executive that discussed the financial preconditions. Number one was the interest and commitment from retail, cinema and restaurant operations.
Sorry, Councillor Follows.
Am I talking at the wrong place?
No, you're not. You know, the part you've just mentioned there, we are about to come on to that under the next agenda item.
Thank you.
Thank you. Leader, I wonder if you could address the question for us, please.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I will be happy to address the points being raised by Councillor Follows in the next set of minutes relating to the executive that was held on the 10th of July when I come to those particular aspects. So in terms of this particular minute and agenda item, I have nothing further to add, and that concludes the items in part one of that executive minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Any other speakers? Can we move to the recommendation that's set out on page 2 of your agenda? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. I have some speakers under part 2, and I would like now to move, if I may, to the Boom Credit Union, Councillor Band.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Some people may know that I was Waverley's representative on an earlier incarnation of credit unions in this part of the world, Surrey Save. So I'm particularly pleased to see Waverley Borough Council continuing to support credit unions and our new credit union Boom in particular. It really does provide a very sound financial source of advice and support for, in particular, our most underprivileged in our borough, and I really commend the work that the executive have done to continue to support this operation. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Band. And our next person, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Excuse me. This item is to approve a £15,000 grant for Waverley to purchase deferred shares in the Boom Credit Union. Boom is a not-for-profit credit union which provides affordable loans, savings accounts and prepaid cards to its customers. Boom gives residents the ability to source finance at a fair price without having to resort to payday loans, often of which levy sky-high interest rates on those who can least afford it. Additionally, the credit union promotes savings and good money management, and they are properly regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority and the Prudential Regulatory Authority. I hope you will all join me in supporting this item.
Thank you. We're just going to wait for Councillor Ramsdale to return, but we do have another speaker on Allfell Football Club. If you'd like to speak again, please, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Allfold Football Club is a great example of a community sports club, run by the community for the community. Due to the hard work and determination of its members, they've achieved many successes, including winning the Surrey County Cup, the West Sussex Premier League and the Chichester Charity Cup. This item is to approve £20,000 for Allfold Football Club in order that they continue to grow as a focal point of the community and go on to achieve even greater success. Waverley is committed to supporting the development of community sport and leisure within the borough. I hope you will all join me in supporting this item and wishing Allfold Football Club the best of luck in the coming season.
Thank you. And moving now to Councillor Ramsdale.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I too wanted to join in thanking the Executive for finding the money for this. This is a really great story for a grassroots football club. Not only have they done their own improvements, but their football's improved. And it's with that that we can note that they're being promoted from, to Division 1 of Step 6 in football. Now that promotion requires extensive ground improvements, including match day floodlights, a 50-seat stand and hard standing and walkaway for players and spectators. The Football Foundation will provide 70% of the costs and Waverley's matching the balance. This is a great community asset. It's not just used for football. The pitches in Clubhouse are maintained by the community, run by the community, for the community. Indeed, I believe the member has a particular interest in this is often the barman for the community. Not that I've had a free pint, by the way. This investment will provide facilities that will be enjoyed by generations to come, and I think it's a great use of £20,000. I hope it has your support.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsdale. I have one speaker on the next item, and that is the capital expenditure, and that's Councillor Band.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. As Chair of the working group which prepared this report, I'm particularly pleased to see that the Executive endorsed all the recommendations of what was a very extensive report. I would also like to take this opportunity of thanking those who participated in its preparation, my fellow working group members, Councillor Gray and Councillor Seaborn, and all the officers who so openly discussed the issues before us. And particularly I'd like to mention and particularly thank our scrutiny policy officer, Yasmin Makin. Without her contribution, this report would not have got to the Executive in the state which it did. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Band, and forgive me, I do have one other speaker, and again, it's Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. It's very rare to get a report which completely hits the nail on the head, but this one really does. It examines the delivery and how we deliver services and how we deliver projects to our residents. It highlights the requirements of project initiation through to budget management and the essential project management, project monitoring and phrasing. It's a really first-rate piece of work. I'm happy to fully endorse it, all the recommendations in the report, and if approved tonight, we will be taking steps as soon as practically possible to implement the recommendations.
Thank you. Leader?
Madam Deputy Mayor, thank you. That concludes the minutes from the Executive of the 5th of June. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to move now to item 8.2, and that's please move the minutes of the Executive of the 10th of July.
Madam Deputy Mayor, thank you. I'm pleased to move the minutes of the 10th of July, and I believe that I do have a seconder. Thank you.
Pleased to second, Deputy Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda was recommendations to Council under Part 1, and that related to the new proposed corporate strategy for the period 2018 to 2023. I have really great pleasure in presenting the new draft corporate strategy. It's an item that we've worked on in collaboration with directors, with heads of service, as an executive team, and more widely as well, consulted on with colleagues. And it really does help us to set the strategic direction for the council across the next 5 years. The strategy itself considers the challenges and the changes that are affecting local government over the next few years and proposes 3 main priority themes: people, place, and prosperity. The strategy itself reflects the needs of our customers and our partner organisations, and we need to remember that more and more the collaborative working with our partner organisations is absolutely key. And it also incorporates a number of the findings from the strategic review that was approved just last year. The strategy itself will be reflected in the council's service plans so that we have all aspects of the council work aligning, which is again very important, along with the annual budget and individual staff performance agreements. And to ensure that our objectives are achieved, progress will be monitored by the executive, the O&S committees and senior managers on a regular basis. And I feel that's really, again, a very crucial aspect to this, because we need to ensure that there are the right check and balances in place and the right approaches, not just from the executive and from the officer team, but also from the wider councillor O&S groups as well. So that's really important. The recommendations are there before you, and I commend the item to Council, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Do we have any speakers? Councillor Follows.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. My question is very brief. It relates to people goal number 3 in this case. I had a conversation with a developer that I won't name in Godalming who told me that an affordable house was about £750,000. I have discussed previously with the leader that we have wards that share a very similar demographic and economic profile. And my personal view of affordable housing is that it needs to be affordable to local people, affordable to local key workers, and affordable to first-time buyers. Would the leader be so good as to comment on what her definition of affordable is? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hyman, please.
Thank you, Lady Deputy Mayor. Yes, we mustn't forget, of course, that this corporate strategy is for the residents, on behalf of the residents. And sometimes perhaps it's easy to lose sight of what they might think of these. It's a lot better than we've had in the past. I've seen quite a lot of corporate strategy documents go past us over the years, and we are getting there, certainly. But if I can pick up on a couple of items here. On page 20, under the place goals for 2018 to 23, point 7 says we are going to implement borough-wide plans with partners to improve air quality. Well, in view of the problems that this council has had with air quality, and in view of, if you look at the latest Surrey documentation, it would seem that our latest figures suggest that Farnham Town Centre is the very worst place in Surrey for air quality. Their old figures showed that the M25 and A23 were worse than Farnham, but that was working on Waverley's old figures, and as ours are considerably worse than we thought, I'm quite sure Farnham is now the worst in Surrey. So it's good to see that we're going to be working on that. But the next line, at paragraph 8, and not surprisingly it relates to the Brightwell's major regeneration scheme, it says there's going to be a new shopping hub and traffic improvements. Traffic improvements is something that we've been looking for in a long time, and it's not something that most people consider actually part of the East Street scheme. But if I turn over the page to 21, how this council's going to work in respect of such worthy causes and things that I think our public would very much look forward to. It says that we must be in continuous conversation. This is the second to last paragraph at the bottom of page 21, Lady Deputy Mayor. We must be in continuous conversation. We're going to complementing robust evidence with local knowledge to inform decisions. That's great. We are going to be doing that. we can't please all the people all the time. We will try hard to find solutions that work locally. That's great. The public are thinking, well, it's going to be big changes. And we will bring people together to work on local solutions to local problems. Fantastic. We'll treat everyone with honesty. Well, there's some big changes here, and we want everyone to do the same to us in return. We didn't know that we had a problem with residents being dishonest with us. What we want to know is when. We will. But I think the residents want to know is when's this going to happen? Because...
point of order, Madam Mayor, point of order. Is Councillor Hyman saying that we are dishonest by phrasing this question in this way?
I'm sorry, if you wish me to run through a list of what we've had over the past 15 years, but it's very easy. Perhaps the easiest thing to do is to ask for what will show that we are being honest, and that is show us the modelling for our great air quality scheme, which is part of the East Street scheme. We've been asking for many, many years. We've got a planning meeting next week. We can have that modelling in front of us, which has supposedly been done, and we've doubted for a long time. Put that in front of us, put the BAT surveys in front of us, do the things which we've been asking for, which show that we're going to be, that this council is honest, Lady Mayor. We will uphold high standards of conduct and integrity. Let's start now. Please, Lady Mayor, if you would, you'll help me to get those documents and an exhibition of the modelling in front of us as soon as possible, will you? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. Are there any other speakers? Can I come... Oh, sorry, Councillor Goodridge.
Madam Deputy Mayor, I've read lots of strategies over the last 20 or 30 years of this council, and can I say how I wish to commend those who have drafted this strategy. It is very readable. I think members of the public, when they read it, can understand it. It's not full of gobbledygook or things that people won't understand, and I would commend Council on, and to thank all those concerned to ensure that we have a very clear, readable strategy for the next 5 years, and of course it takes effect as and when we approve it.
Thank you, Councillor Goodridge. I believe we have Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Deputy Madam Mayor. I'm sure everybody's delighted with the wonderful picture that's in the front of the strategy. I think it sort of represents things. You can look at the words in there, but the strategy document itself, I wish to commend the leader and the officers who've been involved. It's a very clear document. I think it's very important for our governance that we have such a document. It is readable. It's also incisive. There's a lot of things in there that we can hold you to account, promises that are there, and that's what I like to see in the strategy, some real content. And I'm very encouraged that this council will move forward over the next few years very positively and to the benefit of its residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Any other speakers? Leader, can I ask you to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I don't intend to get into a long debate with Councillor Hyman about illegal and legal matters, and I don't intend to get into a lot of negative debate tonight, because I think, as other members have pointed out, this is a document that is positive. It also recognises a number of the constraints and challenges we're facing. I made clear in my introduction that it will be an evolving document, regularly reviewed by not just the executive and the senior management team, but by the scrutiny committees as well. So again, that gives us that check and balance. We need to start somewhere with a different and a new strategy. That's exactly what we're doing. Councillor Hyman is very well aware of difficulties faced in results of in relation to the air quality. We've now got an air quality steering group and a number of other measures that he has been privy to in his capacity as chairman, and Councillor Ramsdale as vice chairman of that particular scrutiny committee. have been briefed thoroughly to him, so I'm very disappointed he feels that he wants to air such dirty laundry in public tonight with some of the unnecessary implications he's making. In relation to housing, Councillor Follows is quite right. We do share a very similar demographic in our respective wards, as I know several other members here tonight do. And it's a challenge now, and affordable housing is going to remain a real challenge for us in this borough. We recognise that. We're not going to be able to fix that overnight. Affordable housing, by definition, is basically for people, it's about the needs that aren't met by the market. But to my mind, as we move forward with Local Plan Part 2 and a lot of our emerging policies, one of the areas that I would like to see us working on much further is looking far more carefully at what we can do to help deliver key worker housing, because I think that is one of the areas where we are very vulnerable in Waverley, and we need to really start to look at how we can focus more on that as a method of delivery. Madam Deputy Mayor, I've little else to say on this. I think other colleagues have said far more, and I commend the recommendations to Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. The recommendation is to adopt the Corporate Strategy 2018 to 2023, subject to the 2 amendments proposed by the Executive. Is that agreed? Agreed. Leader.
Madam Deputy Mayor, thank you very much. I now move to the next item, which is the statement on licensing policy for 2018 to 2023. Our licensing policy has to be reviewed every 5 years, and it's customary for the review to come to the Executive and then to Council for approval, as it is doing so tonight. Thank you.
Members, any speakers? Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. As the Leader has said, it is customary for this review to come to the Executive before approval, before full Council. I've discussed the matter with the Chairman of Licensing. There is little change in our policy. We've had a period of consultation and received a few responses which we have noted and include in the revised policy. Page 18 of our agenda refers to the Council continuing to promote all 4 of the key licensing objectives: preventing crime and disorder, public safety, preventing public nuisance, and protecting all children from harm. We continue to work in close conjunction with our partners to achieve our aims. Changes in the policies are few and are highlighted in the agenda papers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Leader, would you like to sum up?
Madam Deputy Mayor, I think the portfolio holder has summed up very well, and I commend the recommendation to Council.
Members, the recommendation is to adopt the revised statement of licensing policy for Waverley 2018 to 2023 for implementation with effect from the 1st of August 2018. Is that agreed? Agreed. Leader.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a really exciting one, and that's the leisure centre investment. We're talking here about investment in 3 of our leisure centres: Farnham, Godalming and Cranley. I think members borough-wide will be really pleased to see the details in the report and the item before them. As I say, having myself been a portfolio holder for this particular area several years ago when I was working with Councillor Band on the last round of leisure centre improvements and investments, it really is great to see it before us. The use of our leisure centres just goes from strength to strength. And as I say, I think there are some speakers to this item, so I will let them speak further on it. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Are there any speakers? Councillor Paul Follows.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Apologies for my previous attempt to have a go at this one on the last minutes of the exec, but I'll try again now. So projects being funded by this East Street dividend really need to be considered in the light of financial viability of that project. I'm going to go back to some previous minutes of the executive which highlighted that interest and commitment from retail, cinema and restaurant operations at an acceptable level with 3 anchor stores, the recovery of residential housing market and the state of investment funding in the UK were all mandatory in terms of financial viability. Now, we could sit here and argue about point 1 all evening, but in practice, a significant section of that restaurant sector of this nature is in decline, to the point that some have gone into administration or pulled out of the scheme entirely. This project has also taken so long that there are effectively now other schemes within Farnham that will be competing over what business there is. And I was not convinced on that subject at the briefing earlier that this is apparently...
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. On a point of order, could I please ask Councillor Follows to slow down? I want to hear what he's saying, but I can't make his words out.
That's absolutely fine. My apologies. I will slow down. We have also seen in the presentation earlier this afternoon that Sainsbury's was considered one of those 3 anchor stores, and I think most of us here would agree that it is actually outside of the scope of that development. Point 2 regarding the housing market is equally debatable, and point 3 regarding the investment is most concerning of all, as that seems to have now been bypassed entirely by encouraging Surrey County Council to make that investment. The actual value of the land seems to have also dropped significantly with various agreements made by Waverley and the developer from £8.7 million in 2002 to just £3.2 million in 2017. I'm certainly not against the investment in leisure infrastructure, and I acknowledge some of the benefits that these would bring to many of our residents. But the funding and the fact we could be investing in more fundamental priorities, such as more social housing, give me some pause. Taxes were also raised this year by this council. At best, these proposals look at a financial climate with somewhat rose-tinted glasses, as one is prone to do when they are both politically and financially invested in a project. So my specific questions: would the leader confirm to what degree any feasibility study on the specific proposals has been published in the public domain? Can you confirm what level of consultation has been undertaken with Godalming residents about what is actually required and with local competing businesses? Could officers also confirm which specific developments in Godalming the £600,000 of Section 106 contributions are derived? And finally, would the leader, as portfolio holder for the scheme, give her assurances that the scheme is financially viable and that these new leisure projects, if they require any substantial borrowing or an additional penny of public money to implement, that they be brought back to this chamber for review? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Follows. Councillor Beeman.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Lady Deputy Mayor. Yes, I share the excitement of the investment in these leisure centres. I am a member of Farnham Leisure Centre, and I try and go there once a week. In fact, I try twice, but it doesn't always work out that way. Otherwise, I'd completely seized up, I'm afraid, but there we are. But I read these papers, and some questions started to buzz in my mind. Right? And Councillor Follows has already pointed out that this was held in the Executive Committee on the 10th of July. And in fact, it seems that we can't ask any questions of this particular item because the deadline's passed. Now, this causes me a little bit of concern, in particular in relation to this item. Please don't get me wrong. Investment in leisure centres is very important, and I fully support that. But I have the following questions, which I would like some answers to. I'm not expecting them tonight. But, for example, since Farnham and all other leisure centres in Waverley are essentially commercial activities operating in a very competitive environment, with several other gyms operating in the Farnham area, should not any improvements be funded out of profits rather than made from capital funds released from Brightwells? 1. 2. By using such capital funds, is not Waverley Borough Council effectively subsidising the proposed improvements in the leisure centres, which is anti-competitive when similar facilities are provided in its other locations? 3. This is quite simple, this one, isn't it? Am I right in assuming that the £2.5 million in capital funds released by Brightwells quoted in the public papers on page 56 represents funds being paid by Crest Nicholson for land at East Street? 4. Since the development cost of improvements at Farnham is quoted in the public papers at £1.475 million, and funding of £3.22 million is mainly funded by capital grants, receipts from by capital grants. Why is it necessary then for capital funding to be taken from Waverley reserves with no borrowing charges being applied? I'm going to run out of time, so I'm not going to read all the questions. Why is the development cost of improvements at Godalming not quoted in public papers when the development costs of improvements at Farnham are? Why are capital funds released from Brackwell's being used to fund improvements in Godalming and they're not entirely used in Farnham? There's a number of other questions here, Madam Deputy Mayor, and I'd love to support this particular motion, but I do think we ought to have the right to answer these questions first. So I'm going to ask that this recommendation be deferred. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Beeman. Councillor Seaborn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. With reference to the recommendations before us, can I quote directly from the Overview and Scrutiny Report on Leisure Centre Management that was brought to Executive in June last year? And I quote, "Members identified the need for future investment, particularly at Cranley, as essential for the improvement and financial success, as well as investigation of options for increased provision of car parking at Godalming Leisure Centre. That piece of work identified issues for officers and the Executive to take on, and today we are seeing that they have risen to the challenge. Cranley will get its much-needed investment if we approve these recommendations, and Godalming will get its much-needed additional car parking. Madam Deputy Mayor, this Council has ONS systems in place which analyse situations and the leadership which finds solutions to challenges. I'm delighted to see that the challenges identified last year by the ONS committee, or the ONS work group, has been translated into improvements to our residents' leisure facilities, and I will be giving my wholehearted support to the recommendations before us. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Seaborn. Councillor Beeman, can I please just confirm if you are seeking an amendment? If you do, you will require a second.
Oh, okay.
You need to say what the amendment is if you...
Amendment is, that's okay. Oh, yes. Okay, fine. Yeah. My amendment is that this, I mean, I do want to support this move, please. But my amendment is that this decision should be deferred until the next meeting of the full Council, until we get a full answer to the questions that I've raised.
Do you have a seconder?
Yes, absolutely, I second.
Councillor Potts wishes to speak on this motion.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. In relation to the motion, quite frankly, it's a nonsense. Councillor Seaborn has very, very clearly articulated the work done by the ONS working group across the last few months, the work that was taken on board by external specialist consultants to arrive at the recommendations before you this evening. Both Councillor Follows and Councillor Beeman have also articulated that they felt they hadn't had answers to questions. Can I just be clear to both councillors that, yes, you were unfortunately out of time because of the timings of last week's executive meeting. However, I myself saw the answers that were emailed to both of you this afternoon, answering across several pages the detailed questions that you raised in respect of this. And can I also be clear that Brightwell's money, the Brightwell's money has been received, it's in the bank. We're not reliant on what happens with Crest Nicholson or anything else. We have that money, it's in the bank, it needs to earn an income from us, and we need to have upgraded leisure facilities that our residents in the borough want, not just in Farnham, but borough-wide. We've always said that we would do everything we could to make sure that the Brightwell scheme benefited our residents borough-wide, and that is exactly what will be delivered with the proposals before you this evening. And I urge you members not to defer this item. We want to move it forward and get on and deliver for the sake of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Are there any speakers on the amendment? Councillor Ramsdale.
Thank you, Lady Deputy Mayor. To me, this is a classic no-brainer. Normally, councils are accused of being lazy and not getting on with projects and making them happen. We seem to have a small group of councillors that want to introduce yet more bureaucracy to defer positive things happen. This investment will help members of society in our wards be healthier, be fitter, be more happy in their lives. And what's even better, speaking as an accountant, and I look at Jed as I say, is, well done, we're going to make some money out of it. So we'll get a return, it'll be back into the bank and in use for other projects. As I say, it's a no-brainer. Please throw out this idea that we should delay, yet again, such an important piece of work.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsdale. Councillor Mulliner.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Chairman. I'd just like to add that you very rarely see win-wins in council life. We spend most of our time trying to find how we're going to afford things. And with my current interest in the future budgets, I know how difficult it is to increase council income. So it's worth emphasising that these investments in a very much demanded service will lead, if the projections are correct, to an increase in annual income of approximately £400,000 per annum. Given our current state of revenue forecasts, this is something we should certainly be keen to secure. It may even be an underestimate if profit share comes in as well, as it is at the moment. And it would be folly of the worst sort to delay getting on with this project. So I too do not support the idea of deferment. I think the argument has been made out very well. It has been analysed correctly, and I very much support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mulliner. Councillor Follows.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. First off, I just want to say here, I'm not trying to obstruct this, I'm just trying to get a little bit more information. First of all, the Leader hasn't actually answered a few of the questions about the origin of that 106 money and about whether Godalming residents specifically were consulted. I know you spoke to some consultants, but those consultants probably aren't residents and their opinions are their own, I'm sure. But were actual users of these facilities canvassed in any way? That's all I'm asking. The other thing about this that I have a problem with, about 10 years ago, there was a Farnham Herald article where a Conservative accused a Liberal Democrat of briefing through press releases. I mean, this proposal of the exec was put out as a press release before it went to full council. I think in practice, we're not trying to defer this. We just want more information. That's all we want. I don't think it's unreasonable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Follows. Can I just make it clear to everyone, please, that we are debating the amendment. The Leader hasn't had an opportunity to sum up as yet, so if we can stick to the amendment, which is what we're looking at right here and right now. Next person on the list is Councillor Band and then Councillor Hyman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I oppose the motion to defer these recommendations. This is an urgent piece of work, desperately needed to be got on with. Also, Waverley has a successful track record in investing in leisure facilities, and I see no reason why it shouldn't continue on that basis. So I oppose the motion to defer.
Thank you, Councillor Band. Councillor Hyman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, I mean, I would wish to take a slightly different approach, but if I can ask members to turn to the bottom of page 58, the very, very bottom, and this is in respect of the proposals we've got for Godalming in front of us. It explains that parking availability is a pressure on the Godalming site. It's been extremely successful. We spent an awful lot of money on, 15 million plus, I think it was, invested, was it not 7, 8, 9 years ago, on our leisure centres. We haven't had a positive return on that money. We are getting a return now, but it certainly hasn't paid back all the money that was invested. But of course we do have to spend money on them anyway. We have to accept that. We operate them. It's something we do. It says there are currently 70 spaces. But then look at the final sentence there, members. Additional car parking will be necessary before considering further investment on this site. And then you turn to the recommendations and it does the opposite, because we're considering further investment on this site without that additional parking. So I do see some merit in the motion to defer, although I wouldn't personally would not make me vote against, because we do want this to move on. I do object, I must say, Lady Mayor, that, Deputy Mayor, not to yourself, but to the suggestions that we've had that just about everything is going to be paid for out of the meagre income from Brightwells. We've got a £3.2 million extension, a horror story, which still isn't open on at the Memorial Hall. That's presumably being paid. It was meant, the Brightwells money was meant to pay back a lot of the money that has been put into it by the council, £5–6 million over the years. Of course, we spent £4 million odd on land assembly as well. How many times are we going to spend this money? I mean, we get quite tired of the government re-announcing their government spending over and over again, don't we? It's a trick governments use. How many times are we going to do this here and pretend that we're going to spend this money to everyone's benefit over and over again just to justify a scheme that well, Farnham certainly doesn't want? Anyway, I have another problem, and really, I suppose I perhaps should mention this to the substantive, but under recommendation 5, it says the recommendation is that we commit to a multi-million-pound investment, and we're going to then identify a potential location. And now I know in Cranley that could be a very hot potato, finding this location that can be agreed, that isn't out of the kindness of some pet developer's heart or whatever. There are things that need doing before we commit to a multi-million-pound development, and certainly where we're told that we need to consider...
Councillor Hyman, forgive me for interrupting you. It's something I really don't want to do, but we do really need to stick to the amendment and what's been discussed.
Well, I think the amendment is asking for deferral, and what I'm saying is that I would want a couple of changes there. I certainly think that we should... that there's no mention in these recommendations to additional car parking being agreed before we go into this, and so I would like a minor change to one of the... I tried to look at recommendation 1 and think, can we change that, make a minor recommendation, a wording change to the recommendation that would just cover that, but it's very difficult to do, and certainly I wouldn't want to commit to a multi-million-pound investment. So can we take these recommendations separately if you're just going to vote this down? To me, this document says we should defer because that's the advice from officers, but I don't think it will be successful anyway to the amendment. So. But I would like to make changes. Can we take the recommendations separately, please?
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. If you wish to make another amendment, we'll have to go through the same process like we did before. But before we do that, I would like to go back to Councillor Follows and say, I'm sorry, I can't come back to you. The rules say that if you've had... Thank you. Are there any other speakers on the amendment before we go back to Councillor Beeman? Yes. We're just asking first if there's any other speakers before we return to you. No?
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I shall make your life easy. I shall withdraw the proposed amendment. Because I too want to see investment in these leisure centres, right? And very much so indeed. But I withdraw, because you did say, in fact, that I've had a reply to my questions. I haven't received that as yet in my email, and I'll take it in good faith that you have answered these questions. So I shall make your life easy and withdraw this amendment, if that helps. But let me emphasise, this has actually demonstrated a real problem. Because every time the Executive Committee meets 7 days before the full Council, then the decisions of that Executive Committee, if they're controversial or need questions, cannot be faced by the full Council membership. It's as simple as that. Anyway, I hope that helps.
Councillor Beeman, thank you. So beautifully and eloquently put. Thank you. And thank you for giving me an easy ride on my first night in the chair. Thank you. I understand you're withdrawing your amendment. Just to confirm.
I totally confirm.
Thank you. We can tell. We can tell. Yeah, we can tell you work out. Yeah, well done. Councillor Hyman, can I just confirm if you wish to make any further amendments?
We're back on the sorry, Lady Mayor, I've got to stand up. We're back on the substantive, aren't we? And I've got the choice of proposing an amendment to this. I don't know, can anybody see a few words that can be put into one that will keep everybody happy, just to, under recommendation 1, that takes account of what it says at the bottom of page 58, i.e. that we've got to sort out the additional parking before we go spending more money at Godalming, because of that, so it makes sense. And removes the word commit, because why should we commit? It's a bad decision making.
Councillor Hyman, you know I like you. I like you a lot.
Not as much as I like Deputy Mayor.
But if we can, please, if we are going to have an amendment from you, which I will accept respectfully if that's what you wish to do so, can I please have it and a seconder?
To be honest, I don't want to be here all night. If you give me the opportunity... Oh, everybody else does. So if I
second that, Madam Mayor.
No. I simply want. I think the point is made there. I don't like the idea of committing to a multi-million-pound development, but you're all going to vote to do that anyway. You're nuts. So we will perhaps agree. Can we? If we take them one at a time, so I can abstain on 1 and 5, and anybody else with common sense might do the same. And I won't propose an amendment.
We will come to that when we come to the recommendations.
Thank you.
Coming back to the debate, the next speaker is Councillor Hyman. No, you withdraw. Excellent. And we've now got Councillor Wheatley.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor. I'm delighted to get back to the subject of the leisure centres. I very much welcome Waverley's proposals for our leisure centres. I chaired the design and consultation group when Godalming Leisure Centre was finally getting off the ground back in 2010-11. We fought to keep the old centre open to avoid losing the swimming clubs and other regular users. The result, however, was that not only did we retain the old customers, but gain many new ones, to such an extent that Waverley is finding it necessary to extend the facilities, taking the opportunity to expand the car park at the same time, thus also dealing with local residents' justified complaints. The Wellbeing ONS, of which I'm Vice Chairman, did an in-depth study of the health inequalities in the borough. In this, we make a recommendation that GPs should refer vulnerable patients to the leisure centres, thus giving them the opportunity and perhaps incentive to take more exercise and become healthier. If our leisure centres are already at full capacity, it means there would be no possibility for our more disadvantaged people to benefit from this suggestion. As for finance, not only have the borough's new centres saved a great deal of money through modern eco-efficiencies, etc., they make an extremely healthy return on any investment, infinitely better and perhaps even more reliable than many treasury bonds. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wheatley. Councillor Jenny Else.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. So this is really part of what everybody else has said, actually. It's not news to you, I don't think, but I'm going to say it anyway. As part of the continued improvements of our leisure portfolio, the leisure team commissioned a very helpful piece of work that identified further opportunities for investment and longer-term savings. We hoped that this work would positively contribute in relieving some of the financial challenges that the Council is currently facing. Our leisure contract has been a big success in more ways than one, and it is important and timely to remind ourselves of some of these successes. When the contract was first procured, Waverley used to pay over £800,000 per year to the contractor to operate 5 sites. As a result of continued contract negotiation, management action and capital investment, Waverley currently receive a management fee paid by Places for People of £120,000 in 2018, an improvement of £965,000 per annum over the last 10 years. In addition, the leisure contract also creates an annual profit share payment to Waverley, which in 2016-17 exceeded £400,000. Hazelmere Leisure Centre was the most recent site to receive investment with a 4.1 million refurbishment completed in 2015. The final elements of the upgrade have just been completed with an additional £90,000 refurbishment to the dry side toilets and spectator seating area. Therefore, no further investment is required at Hazelmere at this time. The recent investment has been a great success, with usage continuing to rise. The centre meets current and projected need. However, we will continue to monitor this as part of our leisure facilities strategy. In addition, an investment to replace the carpet of one of the artificial turf pitches at the Edge Leisure Centre will be completed by the end of the year. This will bring the pitch back up to standard and enable the local sports club to excel. The leisure centres not only provide us with financial savings, but also help us to deliver the Council's health and wellbeing aspirations. During 2016-17, the leisure centres engaged over 7,000 individuals to deliver sessions to improve health and wellbeing in the community. These include GP referrals and rehabilitation sessions, weight management, falls prevention courses, and health checks. And I hope you would agree that the leisure centre offering is an important part of the services we deliver to our public. It is important to continue investing in our facilities and improve what we are offering in order to meet the emerging public health agenda, keep up with trends and competitors, and to accommodate the demand that the increasing population within Waverley will create. The outcomes of this detailed piece of work, including the business case for each option, are presented in this report, which I would like to encourage you to consider and I think support. I think we've heard that you will be supporting, but I hope so. Let's keep our fingers crossed. In summary, what the report proposes is that Waverley funds an extension at Farnham Leisure Centre to incorporate a soft play area and a climbing wall, funds the extension of Godalming Leisure Centre to incorporate a bigger gym, an additional studio and more changing rooms. This proposal also includes a car park extension, which is essential to achieve before any work takes place. And finally, consider funding a new leisure centre in Cranley to replace the current one, but more work will need to take place to explore all possibilities in terms of location. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elts. As you note, I was very lenient there. It's my first time up here. Moving to Councillor Ramsdale.
Thank you, Lady Mayor. I think my points were covered earlier.
Councillor Gray.
Thank you. I asked the question so long ago, I thought... I just want to say 2 or 3 things. One, I picked up the comment that was made earlier about the potential impact of having a subsidised leisure centre and on other parties. I think members need to draw and look at the returns on this investment. Those returns are certainly very competitive. If anything, we could be accused of charging too much. But it's a very valuable contribution to the council, and I think the leisure centres have been a success. The investment that we've had in the past has been a great success. What would be very tragic if this council just left this, did not go far-reaching, and plan to continue to keep those leisure centres up to date, improve them and expand them. I think the numbers are there, and I'm pretty sure that the leisure centres actually run surveys about what their members say and what their members think. I think there has been quite a lot of consultation and feedback from the members of it. I'm delighted to see Cranley in there. I think especially as the tremendous growth that's going in that part of the world, I hope that the leisure centre can be built, improved, or however it's going to be constructed. And I certainly welcome the word commit. I'm glad that this council is going to commit to a new leisure centre in Cranley.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Mulliner. Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. There's not much for me to say, but to just indicate that a very careful, thorough read of this report shows what in-depth and quality investigation took place. It's also taken place over a period of time, and have been intermediate documents available for review, and they've been published, and then they have been subjected to overview and scrutiny. It always distresses me that the sort of questions we have had tonight come at a council meeting. And my view is that such questions should be properly asked during the preparation process. Now, I am left with absolutely no doubt as to the recommendations being offered. The project started under our old corporate priorities, 4 of them. There were 2 in particular that this particular project satisfies: health and well-being and value for money. So for me, it ticks the boxes, as we say, and I fully commend this particular report and the recommendations to all councillors, and say that I am proud to be a Waverley councillor and not just a councillor of a particular narrow ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Thank you. Councillor Follows, I apologise again. I know that you wish to speak, but unfortunately, because you already have on this item, we can't allow you to speak again. Thank you. I'd now like to move to Councillor Byam.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Well, it's been a very interesting debate, hasn't it? I've been sitting here for many years, listening to similar debates. For many years, under the Liberal Democrat administration, who had promised to their electorate and to us that they would be improving and building and doing all sorts of different things on leisure centres. I can remember very strongly the then leader, who was a Godalming councillor, who was leader, promising that money from East Street, as it was then called, would definitely build a new Godalming leisure centre. Unfortunately, he didn't last the course, because 7 years ago, the Conservatives took over control, and the first thing that they decided to do, and I have to say, I was very surprised that we were that bold as to find the money to build the Godalming Leisure Centre, but we did. It's been a fantastic success. It needs more money, as do all the other leisure centres. And therefore, we have to go forward and spend some of this money, invest some of this money to actually get money back and get our electorate improving their health and doing all the things that they wish to do. And of course, the point about Cranley has been made about the massive growth in population, of which most of our areas are. The one thing that is missing with this, of course, is, and we did ask for it, and one of our previous leader, Councillor Gates, asked for this, is when is the Bramley Leisure Centre going to be built?
After Warnock.
Thank you, Councillor Byam. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'd just like to say that I was part of the working party for the Leisure Review, which identified the deficit at Cranley. And as a Cranley councillor, I very much welcome this investment. I don't share Councillor Hyman's concerns about the word commit. it does commit to a multi-million-pound investment in leisure facilities in Cranley. And as everybody has said, with the expanding population and with the deficit in our current facilities, it's something that's very much needed within Cranley. I also look forward and welcome the commitment for the consultation with the residents in Cranley, and I look forward to working with the leisure team here, with the parish council and with other members to bring this to fruition for Cranley. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor McClose.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'll just keep my comments brief. I think the leisure centre is one of the very best things that this council does, and I certainly support an investment in it and the further expansion of it. I was chairman of the committee, the ONS committee, which received the report of the working group, and I think they did a very good job. And I certainly support the comments from Councillor Ellis and Councillor Wheatley about the health benefits that the leisure centres bring to the residents. I'd have to say, on the other hand, actually, I'm a little bit puzzled by the idea that 2.5 million of this comes from the Brightwells project. I presume this is from the £3 million that we received from the land. But I have to point out, and I think Councillor Hyman referred to it, that we actually spent something like £4 million in assembling land. So I'm not sure that we've actually made a profit in land as part of the Brightwells scheme. Maybe I just don't understand how it's accounted for within our council accounts, but it just puzzles me that we're making a profit of money on land to help fund the leisure centres. I have to just say I don't understand it. Perhaps the leader could explain.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers before I ask the leader to sum up? No? Leader.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I think colleagues have summed this item up very well. Just to clarify the point made by Councillor Follows much earlier, in respect of this money comes into the capital fund. We have two funds. Housing and any building on social housing would have to come from the HRA, which is ring-fenced, and we can't transfer between the two at this time. So that is why we're using this capital receipt in this way to earn income. In terms of some of the other more detailed questions that Councillor McLeod has raised, the money is from the land. That was the money that was paid over by Crest Nicholson. But again, if you would like a slightly more detailed written answer, happy to do that. But I haven't got all of the detailed figures to hand with me this evening. But I commend this and the recommendations to you and to Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. There are 5 recommendations from the Executive that are detailed on page 2. What I would like to do is take those recommendations one at a time rather than en bloc. Is that agreed? Agreed. Recommendation number 1. Is it agreed? Agreed. Number 2? Agreed. Number 3? Agreed. Number 4? Agreed. All together now. Number 5? Agreed. Thank you. Yep. Leader, if I may ask you, please.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. The next item is a property matter, and that was considered in exempt. I'm not sure if we have anyone who wishes to speak on that, or if I can move to part 2.
Are there any speakers? Leader?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. There are a number of matters to report under Part 2, and I believe there are speakers.
Thank you, Leader. Just before we do that, There is a recommendation there from the executive. Its details in Exempt Annex 5 on page 76 of the 2 follow-up book. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Part 2 items, I have some speakers, and I'd like first to go to Councillor Robert Knowles on ONS review.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I would like to briefly comment on this item because I have concerns regarding health inequalities in Waverley which aren't being addressed in this, maybe the elephant in the room, and in the main services that are out with Waverley's responsibilities. The health service in Surrey seems like many other services, a two-tiered service, North Surrey and the rest. In my town of Hazelmere, there is an excellent GP surgery and the only minor injuries unit in the borough. But the MIU only functions from 9 to 5 from Monday to Friday, not due to lack of demand, but because the CCG will not fund additional hours, which would of course take pressure off the A&E at Guildford. When CCGs replaced the old system, which for us was NHS Surrey, there was an intention that the CCG would benefit no local need. But it seems that CCGs in Surrey are dominated by North West Surrey CCG and is little different to NHS Surrey, which was based in Leatherhead. Compare the north of the county to the southwest. If one lives in Weybridge, for example, one lives within 15 miles of some 7 acute hospitals, most with A&Es. For those in Hazelmere, there is just one, just within 15 miles. The next being St Richard's at Chichester, 21 miles away. Hardly equality of acute health care. Ambulance response times are still very poor in the rural south of the borough, and we know that stroke care was transferred from Guildford to Frimley, a remote location with congested roads and bad transport links. And there is an urgent need for us to support and retain services at the Royal Surrey. So whilst some good points have been considered by the ONS, it is time to address the elephant in the room. And for this council to put pressure on partner organisations and stand up for our residents and address the inequality of acute care in Surrey, which affects us particularly. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Knowles. Councillor Ramsdale.
Thank you, Lady Deputy Mayor, but my comments have been addressed already. Thank you.
Councillor Jenny Else.
Thank you, Deputy Madam Mayor. I just wanted to thank very much the Community Wellbeing Overview and Scrutiny for an excellent report. It's the most in-depth review ever undertaken of healthy inequalities in Surrey. So going on from what my colleague Councillor Knowles has said, it's a good start. It's a big subject. But I think what the work that they did covered quite a large area of health inequalities, and that's not to say that's the end of the work. I'm hoping that it will be going onward. So we will strengthen our partnership links, and it's a good time to look at how we can work together with our partners to improve health and well-being of our residents. So the services that we provide as a council are all important determinants of health, and particularly mental health, older people's services, leisure and arts, community safety and many others. So we play a very important role in the health and well-being of our residents. So it will be important to work with health colleagues and other partners and to focus services on those most in need. And I thank the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the work that they've done to highlight the inequalities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Else. The next item, it's the ONS review of housing design standards. I have Councillor Seaborn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'm delighted that the Executive has accepted the recommendations of the task group that reviewed Waverley's Council House design standards. As a council, we all can take great pride in not only continuing to build council houses, but also in building council houses to a high standard. However, resting on our laurels will not serve our tenants well. Consequently, it has been an absolute delight to work with hugely enthusiastic and committed colleagues, officers, tenants and external experts in a task group to deliver recommendations that will ensure that the next generation of Waverley council houses will be even better than those that we are building at the present. Our tenants can be assured that the lessons from the Grenfell Tower tragedy will be incorporated into the new standards, and that new houses will benefit from evolution in building methodology and technical advances. In delivering recommendations, the task group was constantly aware of the need to balance innovation with cost, so that the improvements that this work will deliver will not decrease the number of houses that the council can build. Madam Deputy Mayor, the first goal of the new Waverley housing strategy is to increase delivery of well-designed, well-built, affordable housing, and the new council house design standards are well aligned with that goal. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Seaborn. Councillor King.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Mayor. There's very little I can say following Councillor Seaborn's summary and outlining the hopes and aspirations of the board. Excuse me, I've gone a bit hoarse. But I really need to thank the ONS ONS Scrutiny Review Group for this incredibly thorough piece of work. It took them ages. It came out of a visit to Oxford Ridge that they made to go and look at some of the houses we were actually delivering there. And I think it was a brilliant topic for them to pick up, to do a thorough review of, and I'm really grateful that they've done it. I'd also like to thank as well all the members of that group. That was excellent, but I'd particularly like to thank the tenants panel members who were involved. They are so engaged with everything that we do in housing, and their commitment should be acknowledged. As Councillor Seaborn says, we already build homes to a very high standard of design and construction, but we can always do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Hyman.
Thank you. Yes, well, it's good to see evolving design standards, and a lot of hard work has gone into this, and so I echo, I won't repeat what Councillor Seaborn has said, but there is one issue, though. The executive documents detailed the proposed standards of provision of storage, and that's something which is, well, most members here, I guess, have got garages, they've got sheds, they've got spare rooms, most of them probably, and plenty of built-in cupboards, and they've got lofts, probably not secure cycle storage, because only new homes have those these days, but even cellars, a few cellars amongst members, I would imagine. So you've got storage. Now, I would urge you to take a look at the level of storage that's being put into these new builds. Because if you had to try and live your life out of 2 or 4 cubic metres of storage when you're used to having hundreds of cubic metres yourself, and you think, well, shouldn't we be looking at that? So I would just urge you, when this comes around again, I apologise, I didn't take part in this exercise, and perhaps I should have done and insisted on more and more storage, but. You know, it is something which I hope will be taken account of in future in the housing design standards, because when members are used to having a lot of storage, just think to yourselves what it's like for your tenants if they don't have the luxury of that amount of storage. How can they have garden implements or stuff around to fix the car or whatever it happens to be, all those things in life, or even places to put old fridges and mattresses, rather than chuck them out in the garden. You know, we don't like the sight of them out in the gardens on our estates and whatever, but when there's no storage, then that's what happens, unfortunately. I'm not I'm not encouraging people to throw their mattresses and sofas outside. But there is one further issue on this, and that is that one of the points here is really that we can build as many new homes as possible for the available budget. That's the aim. And so it rather hurts me. It took me years to get an answer, and the answers were in recent documents. And the question was how much money is being spent in all on the regeneration up at Oxford Ridge, and how many homes have we gained? And I think the answer is now 22 million, and that's 35. Some which might be smaller homes, actually, I think, the replacement ones. But that to me, I don't know as that fits in with as many new homes as possible for the available budget. I think that we do need to look at and consider the decision making on these major projects where the council is spending an awful lot of money that is our residents and not ours. It's easy for us to want to play developer and be important and the rest of it, but actually it's our residents' money. 35 homes, £22 million. Work it out for yourself. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. May I just take the opportunity to remind members that if you wish to speak on a Part 2 item, you have to give notice midday of the day of the meeting. So I'm sorry if anybody wishes to speak at this point who hasn't put their name forward. I'm afraid I can't take your question. So moving on. We are now going to go to procurement and waste, but can I just remind members as well that speakers on this item should avoid referring to matters that could go into exempt. These are exempt items. Leader. Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Members will be aware of the work that has been underway to determine our future approach to providing waste, recycling and street cleaning services in Waverley. An overview and scrutiny committee working group carried out extensive review of the options for future service delivery and made a number of recommendations through the Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee to the Executive on the 6th of February. The process is at a very commercially sensitive stage. And copies of any report are available from Democratic Services. At this stage, therefore, we recommend to reduce the options and to continue with the procurement routes to the next stage of the selection process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. The next item I have is housing repair and maintenance, and Councillor King.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'd find it rather difficult to actually talk about this report without going into exempt, so I propose not to. Thank you.
Thank you. Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. Just on one item that was raised earlier, and that was in respect of budget and questions being raised by Councillor Hyman, can I suggest that the Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee actually request an update on budget status, and you can get a breakdown then, and I think you'll be a lot clearer on what is being spent. But clearly, if you've got any other concerns or questions, you can also go through to the portfolio holder, Mrs. King, and she can assist with the right way and right route forward, if that's helpful. Madam Deputy Mayor, that concludes the minutes of the 10th of July, and I recommend them to Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you for those reports. Members, I'd now like to move back to the main body of the agenda, and that's item 9, and that's the minutes of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee. Councillor Simon Infold to present, please.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'm pleased to present the minutes of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee held on the 18th of June 2018, and I believe I have a seconder.
I would like to second, Madam Deputy Mayor.
There are no items in Part 1, and I have no speakers in Part 2, and that concludes my report. Hey! I hope that's a record.
Thank you. I warned him. Thank you, Councillor Inchbald. Item number 10, and that's the minutes of the Standards Panel, and I'd like to invite Councillor Michael Goodridge to present.
Madam Deputy Mayor, it gives me great pleasure to present the minutes of the Standards Panel meeting held on the 11th of June 2018, and I have a seconder.
Pleased to second, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Madam Deputy Mayor, there are two matters in Part 1, and both these matters arose out of a member or members wishing the panel to deal with matters where they felt some improvements could be made. And firstly, the first item on membership of the Standards Panel, this question that was asked, which led us into a debate about the panel, was why we were not politically proportionate on the panel. In fact, as it happened, we were, but that was a coincidence. The history of the panel is that its main work originally was to deal with hearings where members of the Borough Council and Parish Councils wished the panel to decide whether they'd been in breach and so on of our rules, and to ensure that members of all those councils were properly educated into these matters. Since then, the Standards Panel has taken on the responsibility in recent times of the Constitution and other matters, and the panel felt that in view of the fact that we were taking decisions now of general interest to the Council rather than specific panel hearings, that we should be a committee. And so we are now suggesting, and the recommendation stipulates, that we now wish to be a committee. It will actually make not a ha'porth of difference to the membership of the panel, which in the past was 9 members and the leader of the main opposition. Under the new arrangements, it's not necessarily the leader of the main opposition. It could be anybody else in the opposition. But it doesn't make any difference to the constitutions of the panel. It does, however, have a knock-on effect when one does all the arithmetic for all the committees, and that will come up later on this agenda because there's minor tinkering is required as a result. So that is the background to it, and I'm happy to sum up if anybody wants to speak.
Are there any speakers? Councillor Follows.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Can I just give my thanks to the Chair of the Standards Panel for taking the critiques of it in the spirit of which I meant it, and also for the officers for following up on the query. As much as I would love the panel to have been disproportionately representative, as there are in some other boroughs, I think this is a good start and is a much better system, particularly for the remit that it now has. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Follows. Any other speakers? Councillor Goodridge.
I have nothing to add, and therefore, Madam Mayor, no doubt you will put the recommendation.
The recommendation from the Standards Panel is on page 3 of the main council agenda. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you, Councillor.
Madam Deputy Mayor, the second item arose as a result of a joint planning meeting held in the last couple of months, when it was clear that something in the Constitution was missing. If you read the agenda on page 22, you will see the arithmetic doesn't add up. Don't worry about that, whether it's 25 to 33 or 22 to 33 makes no difference. It's the principle. And the principle that the standards panel felt was reasonable was that once a planning matter comes to the Joint Planning Committee, then that Joint Planning Committee remains seized of that application in its whole or its parts. So that if there's any increase in the number of housing, it must come back to joint planning and cannot go to the local committee, which was what was going to happen at Amnets Lane if it hadn't been called in and matters put right. That's the first principle. So once joint planning are seized of a matter, it remains seized of the matter if a further decision has to take place. The second matter, it relates to, if you recall, that matters go to joint planning if there's 25 houses or more. And what we wanted to ensure that if, for example, an application went in for 24, and then subsequently people wanted to increase it, say, to 26 and goes over, then immediately joint planning are seized of the matter. So that I think that is clearly understood in practice, in theory, but in practice the rules didn't say so. Hence, we have made some additional wording which are in bold type on the papers, and hopefully that is self-explanatory to ensure that the right thing happens so far as major applications or large applications are concerned.
Are there any speakers? Councillor Goodwin.
Nothing to add.
The recommendation from the Standards Panel is on page 3 of the main council agenda. Is that agreed? Agreed.
Madam Deputy Mayor, I've had no notice of any questions under part 2, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Item number 11, proportionality and committee and allocation of seats. Leader, would you please like to introduce this report?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. The report, I think, speaks for itself in relation to the changes that have been made following the Farnham by-election and political proportionality on the committees. The report is before you. It details membership of all committees, and as I say, that I recommend that to Council for agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Are there any speakers? Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to say that I am also in complete agreement with what has happened.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Any other speakers? Members? We are asked to note the proportional allocation of committee seats and agree the nominations set out in Annex 2. Is that agreed? Agreed. Item 16, exclusion of press and public. There are no exempt items to consider. Thank you for attending. The meeting is now closed. But before I do close, can I just pay tribute to my colleagues alongside me this evening for your support. I'm not sure I could have done this without you. I would also like to pay tribute to Councillor Gordon-Smith and a special tribute to Simon Inchbold for some wonderful words of reassurance. Thank you. Thank you.